maybe should we talk about Hanukkah? Drop till more people come. Morning, everybody. You know, in Hanukkah, the mitzvah, every night we go from 1 to 2 to 3. And the Gemara has a discussion. Why do we go 1, 2, 3, 4? The Shammai says you should go 8, 7, 6. That's how the Shammai says. And the Gemara says that the reason why Beis Hillel says, one of the reasons why Beis Hillel says you do 1, 2, 3, 4 is because Ma'alim b'Kodesh ve'en moridim. When it comes to holiness, you're supposed to go up in holiness and you don't go down in holiness. So instead of doing 8, 7, 6, you do 1, 2, 3 because you're moving up in holiness. I think this is a big message on Hanukkah. We have to ask ourselves when we look at the Hanukkah menorah, and we come to the second night of Hanukkah, or even the first night of Hanukkah, when we say we're all lighting one candle, we say, why are we lighting one? There are 8 days to the holiday. Maybe we should light 8 candles the first night. And then the second night, we should light 7 candles because there's 7 days left. And we'll say no, because we got to always move up in Kedusha. We do a certain amount today. Tomorrow we do more. Tomorrow we do 2. And the next day, we do 3. Just like the Shulchan Aruch says, we put on a talit and then tefillin. Why do you put on talit and then tefillin? Why not tefillin and then talit? Because tefillin is holier than talit. We want to move up. We want to grow in our holiness, in our kedusha. And therefore we put talit and tefillin. So I think that's a big message. The message of Hanukkah is the Jewish people went to fight for the ability to keep Torah and mitzvot. They went to fight to have more holiness in their life. Kedusha. Mitzvot bring holiness. Asher kitushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. So therefore, since they went to fight to bring holiness, the way the Chachamim instituted the way we're supposed to, or the minhag, the mahadrin min mahadrin, which is the highest way to do it, is to every night you go ahead and you add another candle. You show you're a Jew that's growing. You take the message, and that's how the message has to be in life. We have to ask ourselves, are we ma'alim b'kodesh? Is every day in our life, are we growing? Every day, am I doing more mitzvot every day, adding on more mitzvot to what I had before? Whatever holiness I had today, tomorrow I have more holiness. Because tomorrow again I did more mitzvot, or maybe I did even more mitzvot than the day before. I learned more, I did more mitzvot, I was kibbutz avei more, whatever the mitzvah is. Maybe that's, I think, a big, nice message to look at the Hanukkah menorah and say, wow, why I have 2 today. I only had 1 candle last night. I'm moving up. I think that's a big message that we need to think about. Also, there's the amazing story of Yehudit. The mice of Yehudit, that many people, we have the minhag, they don't have dairy, to why people have dairy on Hanukkah. And one of the reasons why people have dairy on Hanukkah is to remember the story of Yehudit when she went ahead and she fed the king of the Greeks milk products and wine to get him tired, and therefore she chopped off his head. And we need to realize, and if you look at the story, it's amazing her dedication. It's amazing what kind of woman she was, such a holy woman, how she fasted, how she prayed, how she had bitachon. Unbelievable. I recommend that everybody should learn the story. It's called Maaseh Yehudit. You're going to be blown away when you read the story of Maaseh Yehudit.
When they do Hanukkah before they and they give this story.
It's unbelievable.
It's the full one, but it's a beautiful story.
Yes, it's a beautiful story. Yeah, that's what I recommend.
So
Different Svarim on Hanukkah. If you go to a Judaica store and then you ask them for a sefer on Hanukkah that has it. Good morning, Silverman.
Morning.
Okay, morning. So we're on Yud Zayin Amud Beis. We are on 16b. The bottom of the page. Oma Rabbi Yosef. Oma Rabbi Yosef Ketanoi. We just said yesterday that if a person goes ahead and takes off truma, he separates truma, he separates maaser rishon, separates, he gives 10% to the Levi, but he does not separate on the third and the sixth year the maaser ani, the 10% that goes to the poor person. We said that the food has a status of tevel, and it's tevel. The food cannot be eaten until there's a separation of the maaser ani, the 10% that goes to the poor person. And now the Gemara comes from Yosef. Yosef is one of the Amoraim, and he says, by the way, the statement that Rav said before is machloket tanoim. That this, it's not a universally accepted idea that if you don't separate the 10% for the poor person, that it will be subject to tevel, that the food would be forbidden. Rather, you have a financial obligation to give to the poor person, and you didn't fulfill your financial obligation to the poor person, but it will not affect the rest of the food. One of you there. So that is what the Gemara now is suggesting. Rabbi Yosef is suggesting. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, Ein sarich likrov et Hashem al ma'aser ani shel demai. You do not need to even call a name to say that a certain part of this. Let's say I have a pile of grain, and I want to, and I don't need to say this part, the south part or the north part should be ma'aser ani, should be 10% for the poor person. What does that mean? What's going on over here? So look at the Rashi. The bottom Rashi on the page. Everybody got it? The last Rashi on the page. The Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan the Kohen Gadol, Shalach b'chol gvul Yisrael. He made a survey throughout the Jewish kingdom. And he saw that the Amei Haaretz, that the uneducated Jewish people were chashudim ala masrot. They were suspected of not removing masrot. By the way, the majority did take off maaser, but it was a minority. It was a minority of people that was enough to create a suspicion. It was enough people that did not separate masrot. Chutz mitruma gedola. The only thing that they took off was Truma Gedolah, which seems to be Truma Gedolah, being that it's a small amount. It's 2% the average person gave. And technically, you can even give less than 2%. There's technically Chita Achat Poteret Takri, any amount technically which would technically permit to make the rest of the food permitted. And at least regarding Truma, I mean, the truma could be fulfilled with a small amount, so therefore people, the Amei Haaretz, took off the truma. But they did not take off the other masrot. Omar lehem liYisrael. So he told the Jewish people, Banai, my children, Kishem shatruma b'mita, kacha tevel b'mita. The same way you understand that truma, if truma is eaten by a non-Kohen, it would be liable to mita b'dei shemayim, to die premature. So too, tevel b'mita. If you go ahead and you do not separate the masrot, and you go ahead and you eat the food without taking off the tithes, also there's a punishment of mita b'dei shemayim. So what did he do? How did he deal with the situation? So first he tried to educate the people and tell them that. But he didn't feel that was sufficient. So what did he do? Amad v'tikein. He got up and he instituted. Halokeach me'am haaretz. We're in the Rashi. You got it, Yaron? Yehuda, the Rashi, 4 lines on the bottom, Tezdai, and on the base. The Rashi on the bottom.
Got it.
Mr. Silverman, you got it?
Yep, I got it, Rabbi. With you.
Halokeach me'am haaretz. Someone who buys from an uneducated Jew, yafish kol hamasrot. He should separate all the masrot. Umakvan latzmon. But you're allowed to go ahead and keep the maaser for yourself. You can eat it yourself. Why is that? Because, like we said, most people separated the maaser. Most people gave the maaser. Now, morning, Yosef.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning. There's something called safek isur. There's something called safek mamon. There's something called a question of violating an isur, something that's forbidden, like not kosher food. That's called a safek isur. It's not a question of money. Whether I'm allowed to eat this, is this thing forbidden to eat? That's called safek isur. Something called safek mamon would mean, whose money does this belong to? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to you? So when we have a halacha, safek mamon lekula, we say hamotzi mechaveru alav araya. If it's possible, if there's a good chance that this money belongs to me, the one who bought the produce from the poor person. I bought the produce from the poor person. Maybe he already separated the maaser already. So if he already separated the maaser, I don't need to go. Therefore, I don't need to take off any maaser. But the possibility that he didn't separate the maaser, and therefore the food will be tevel, the food, and it will carry with it a serious isur of eating food that was not tithe, that would carry with it the punishment of mitabedei shemayim. So how do I want to get rid of that possibility? The person, the owner who bought it, wants to get rid of the possibility of getting death for eating this food. So how does he remove the possibility of death? By separating the maaser. He bought it from the amaretz. He bought the produce. Since there's a good possibility that the amaretz did not separate the maaser, small possibility, he separates the maaser rishon, and he goes ahead and he separates the maaser rishon, and he goes ahead and he separates the maaser ani. He goes ahead and he separates the maaser ani, and he could keep it, and he could technically
use it. He could use it.
Use it for himself. Now that he separated it, so it's no question it's not tevel. The food now, the produce has been fixed because the tithes have been separated. Now the question is, who do the tithes belong to? Does it belong to me, the one who bought it, or the one who bought it, or belongs to the Levi, the poor man? So we say, I can keep it for myself. Who does that clear? Now, but in the first and second and fourth and fifth year with this Maaser Sheni, I separated the Maaser Sheni, and the possibility that it is Maaser Sheni, then that possibility, I have to go ahead and take that to Yerushalayim and eat that 10% in Yerushalayim. Again, I could keep it for myself. I can eat it, it's mine. Maaser Sheni, I eat it in Yerushalayim. So that's what Rashi says. Rashi says, we'll continue. Say that again?
Why is this good for the Amaretz?
Because here was the Amaretz, the uneducated Jew, was the one who sold the food. He was responsible to have already, he was supposed to take off the maaser before he sold it.
Yeah, but when you buy it.
So when I buy it, if it was already taken off, I don't have to do anything. But since there's there's a small possibility he didn't take off the maaser, and therefore I can't, this food, it's not kosher food. Because if maaser wasn't taken off, it's tevel. It's food before, it's tevel, and it can't be eaten. So therefore, I need to separate the maaser to make sure that the food is not tevel. I take it off the maaser, right? No longer. Say it again. Again, I need to take off the maaser in order to make sure that what? That this food is not tevel. To make sure that the maaser was taken off. I can't guarantee that the Amaretz who I bought from separated the maaser. Correct? Do I know if he separated? There's no way I know. I can't trust him also. So I separate. I'll go ahead and I'll take off 10%. I'll take off 10%. Officially, it's 10% that's supposed to go to the Levi. And I'll take off 10% that goes to the poor person, let's say, in the third and sixth year. But once I separated it, I don't even need to give it to them. Because it's possible that it was already separated, that the Amaretz already separated before he sold it to me. Therefore, I don't need to give it to them. But I separated to ensure. Good morning, Yosef Atzadik. I separated to ensure that I'm not eating food that was not types that Maaseh wasn't taken off. So that's what. Then now back in the Rashi. Rashi says like this: Halakeh v'tiken halakeh, 4 lines in the bottom. Halakeh ma'amoretz, one assignment. Someone who buys from the Amoretz, yafrish kol hamasrot. He separates all the masrot. U'ma'akvan la'atzmo, and he keeps it for himself. Ochel ma'aser rishon, and he eats the ma'aser rishon, that 10% that he separated for the Levi, he could keep. Why? And because we said it's a suffix mamon. Maybe it belonged. Maybe the seller already took off ma'aser. Shahari mutal zarim. Even if maybe this food is Maser Rishon. Maybe the one who sold it to me did not separate the Maser Rishon. But the law is Maser Rishon to be eaten by a non-Levi. It's not only for the Levi, so I could eat it. Maser Sheni, when I separate the Maser Sheni, I have to eat it for Yishalayim. Because Maser Sheni, the possibility that this is really Maser Sheni, that the Maser wasn't taken off, I have to go to Jerusalem. The Ibshnat Anihu. Now here we're going where the Gemara is going on Sunday. If it's a year of Shnat Maaseh Ani, as we explained yesterday, not every year do you got to give 10% of the produce. We spoke about you give 10% of your movable money. When you make money in other ways, you give 10%. Maaseh Kasafim, 10% of your money earnings, your wheel and deal and other items. But here we're talking about 10% of your crops. So we say, if it's a year of Masa Ani, a year that you're supposed to give 10% to the poor. So
Rabbi, years 3 and 6?
Years 3 and 6. 3 and 6, it goes to the 10% to the poor. Every year, all 6 years, 1 through 6, the Levi gets every year 10%.
Okay.
The Levi is standing. He gets every year.
The Ani I'm talking about.
But the Aniyim, the poor people, is year 3 and 6 get 10%. So now Rashi says, if Shnat Masahu, if Masa Ani, if it's a year of Masa Ani, Nechel Rabbi Eliezer v'Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer and the Chacham argue. Now, the Kamer Rabbi Eliezer says, the Lomi Boye Yifushim is Safik below Sarich. He says, not only you do not need to separate the Masa Ani, he says the 10%, we're not sure, Simon, if the seller of the food took off the Maseh, gave the poor person. We don't know. So what does Rabbi Eliezer say? Not only you don't have to, not only you don't need to separate the food from the pile, the 10%, even to call out the name, Maseh Ani, even without separating, which is the most easiest thing to do. You don't even have to separate. You could just say, Viloma, Maaseh Ani Shakri Zeh, the 10% that's in this pile, Yehei B'tzvono, Obedromo, the Maaseh Ani, the 10% is supposed to go to the poor person, should be, is in the north of this pile or the south of the pile, Namilot Tzarech. He says, when you buy from an Amoretz, when you buy from an uneducated Jew, and you're not sure if the uneducated Jew actually separated the Maaseh Ani, did he take off the 10% for the poor person, or didn't he? You, the buyer, do not have to worry about that at all. There's no issue for the grain. You bought a whole big bushel of grain, you could go ahead. You do not need to do anything about. You only have to worry about the. You'll take off the Maaser Rishon. You'll separate the Maaser Rishon, and if it's a year that is Maaser Sheni, you'll separate the Maaser Sheni. But if it's a year of Maaser Ani of the poor person, you don't have to worry about that one. You're off the hook. You could just, you don't have to do anything. You don't even have to name. You don't even need to name that that part. You even call it by name. That's what the Gemara says. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Good morning, Charles. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
The Chachamim Omrim, we're now on page 17a in Makkos. Yud Zayin Amar Aleph. The Chachamim say we're discussing, just to bring everybody up to date, we're discussing if a person bought food in the third year of the cycle, there's the Shemitah cycle every 6 years. After 6 years, we have Shemitah, the 7th year. If a person bought produce from an uneducated Jew, where we found out, we did a survey, and we found out that many uneducated Jews are not separating their tithes. They're not giving their tithes. They're not giving their maseh. But there are some, most are, but there's a nice minority that are not. So the question is, what do you need to do? What's the responsibility of the buyer when he buys food from such a person? Does he need to take off the tithes because there's a possibility that the other person did not take off the tithes or not? So the Gemara says that he has to take off the tithes, but there's one tithe that there's a dispute whether he has to do anything for. Which
Ani.
is the Masa Ani? Is the 10% that's supposed to go to the poor people of that crop? It's a matter of this argument whether you have to do anything. Rabbi Eliezer says you have to do nothing. But the Chachamim say, now we're on the Yud Zayin Amar Aleph, now we have the opinion of the Chachamim. The Chachamim say, Korei es Hashem. The Chachamim say you need to do something. You need to at least identify and say, 10% that's in this pile. Good to see you. Good to welcome back. I was thinking of you. 10% that's in the pile that's in the north of the pile shall be for the poor person. So you identify, you said, you by calling it, that's enough to be considered that there's 10%, that Masa Ani was technically designated. That
Rabbi, why the north? Why the north? North represents Gevurah.
But
South represents Chesed.
Yeah, so it seems we'll have to look into more. It seems it's not specifically north because Rashi says either north or south, so it should be any part. So it's not specifically north.
Got it. Okay.
So now, the Gemara we're on 17a. We're on top of the page. Zayin Amar Aleph on Maseches Makkos. So the Gemara wants to understand, Aaron. If you want, you have two choices. You can look inside, or you can do the old-fashioned, just without looking inside, just listening. Whatever you want will be good. So the Gemara says that it's a matter. They're arguing. There's a fundamental disagreement between the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer regarding Masa Ani, and based on that understanding is why the law is the following. What is the root of their argument? That's what the Gemara wants to understand. When you come up with a ruling, when one rabbi says, when you buy from an uneducated Jew produce, and you don't know whether he took off the 10% for the poor person, when one rabbi says you have to be worried about it, and the other rabbi says you don't have to be worried about it, why does this rabbi come to that conclusion? And why does that rabbi come to that conclusion? If you come to a conclusion, you come to a law, you have to have a reason. What's your reason? We always say, Mr. Haber always likes to say case, law, and reason. You have a law, well, what's the reason? What's behind this argument, whether you need to separate the 10% for the poor person when you bought it from an uneducated Jew and you're not sure whether the uneducated Jew did his job, whether you need to go ahead and be extra careful and go ahead and do separate that, deal with the 10% that might go to the poor person. Why does one rabbi say you have to be worried about it and you got to do something? And the other rabbi says, nah, you don't have to do nothing. You're fine. Relax. You're good. What are they arguing about? That's what the Gemara is about to explain. Charles, is it clear what's going on in the Gemara? We'll bring you up to the Gemara. Is it clear? Okay,
Yeah.
very good. So very good. So why is one rabbi not concerned? Why is this rabbi not concerned? Rabbi Eliezer is not concerned. He says, you know what? You're not sure whether he took off the Masa Ani? You don't have to worry. Why don't you have to worry? So the Gemara wants to suggest.
You give him the benefit of the doubt?
Say that again?
maybe you're giving him the benefit of the doubt that he took off Maaser.
Okay, now, so if that's the case, Mr. Silverman, so then you shouldn't give him the benefit of the doubt that he took off the Maaser Rishon. We don't say that we give him the benefit of the doubt regarding the tithe that has to go to the Levi. Why? When the tithe that has to go to the poor person, he says you have to, you don't have to worry about anything. And the tithe that goes to the Levi, he says you would have to do something about you'd have to separate 10% for the Levi, but you'd have to do nothing, Rabbi Eliezer says, regarding the poor person. Why is the poor person not a privileged citizen? Why is he second place? Why is it that we're more concerned about the Levi's thing that you have to separate, but you keep the Levi's for yourself? You have to separate the keeper, you don't have to give it to the Levi. So why is now, and like we explained,
it's on the person himself, it's on the owner of the field. He has this own mitzvah of taking off the master or leaving for the people, right?
yes.
Because the Batuba is saying, "Lo tochal le'echol bish'arecha," so meaning about him, bish'arecha, right?
Yeah.
What mean bish'arecha?
Yeah, you can't eat it yourself. You have to give it to the.
It's talking to the person, it's talking to the owner of the field. Not talking about the guy.
But applies again. The owner of the field, again, even when you sell the food, the buyer can't eat the food if maceration wasn't taken off. If I know let me ask you a question. If I know that I have food, so that's what the Gemara. Listen how the Gemara is going to present it, Yaron. So the Gemara wants to explain it like this: two lines from the top. My lab hakamifu. The Masava, one rabbi holds Vadai Tovlo. If you know for sure that the Masa Ani wasn't taken off, then the crop is called Tevel. The crop
Kosher.
is Tevel would be not kosher, right? Not kosher. If you know that Masa Ani, the same way, if you know if Truma wasn't taken off, you can't eat the rest of the food. You can't eat the food. You have a whole bushel of wheat. I can't eat it if I didn't take off Maaser Rishon, right? There's something called Tevel. Before the tithe was taken off, the food is forbidden to be eaten. Like I can't eat the Torah say bracha, I'm not allowed to eat. I can't eat the food. I have all this wheat here. If I don't take off the 10% from the Levi, the other 90% I'm not allowed to eat. It's a very serious sin to eat the food before the tithe was taken off. That's called Tevel. But that's true when it comes to if I didn't take off the 10% for the Levi. But what about the 10% for the poor person? Does the 10% to the poor person, if I don't take it, before I take off the 10% for the poor person, I already took off 10% for the Levi, is the food still forbidden to be eaten? Or is it that I have a monetary responsibility to give 10% to the poor person? If I didn't do my monetary responsibility, I stole from the poor, but it does not affect the rest of the food. The rest of the food is kosher to be eaten. It's not. It's just I didn't give. Like I have to leave a corner of the field for the poor person. The rest of the field could be eaten. If I didn't leave a corner of the field, the rest of the food could be eaten. I did a sin. I didn't leave the corner of the field, but it doesn't affect the rest of the field. So here the question is, how do you look at the 10% that you got to give to the poor person? Does the 10% that needs to be separated from the produce, you hear, Aaron? Does the 10%, do you need that to be separated in order to be able to eat the rest of the food in the field? Or I don't even need the 10% to be separate to eat the rest of the food in the field. The 10% is just like an independent financial obligation to give to the poor person. So Rabbi Eliezer understands, at the way this rabbi is suggesting, that the 10% is only a monetary obligation to the poor. And it does not affect the rest of the crop. This it doesn't affect the rest of the crop. And now that there's a safek, it's a question whether the seller who I bought the produce from, did he separate the 10% for the poor person and give it to the poor, or he didn't separate it? So that's called a safek mamon, a monetary question. Whose money is this? Is this money, was 10% given to the poor, and therefore the buyer owes nothing, or 10% wasn't given to the poor, and either buyer owed the poor 10%. So we have a rule, Safek Mamon, Hamotzi Mechavero, Alav Arayah. If you want to take the money away from me, you want to obligate me, the buyer, to take 10% and give it to the poor, when maybe already it was given already to the poor. Maybe the seller who I bought from, because most uneducated Jews would take off, but there was a minority that didn't. But since there's a good chance that the seller already took off, so now it's Safek Mamon. Question: if you have a monetary question, if it's my money, his money, and it's not sure, so I technically I could keep it. So that's why the rabbi says I don't got to do anything. There's nothing necessary for me to do. I don't even need to call it Ma'aser Ani. The other rabbi, the Chachamim, what do the Chachamim hold? The Chachamim hold that if you know for sure that Ma'aser Ani wasn't taken off, if you know that the 10% wasn't taken off, it affects the rest of the pile. The rest of the pile is considered tevel, forbidden to be eaten.
Wow.
So if it's forbidden to be eaten, so now, meaning it's not kosher. So now, when I have a safek whether this food, this whole pile, is kosher or not
You have to
kosher.
separate. Yeah, separate it.
I have to separate. Because since I have a safek, this here is a question of kosher or not kosher. When it's a question of money, my money or his money, is it my money, or this money belongs to the poor person? So we say, if it's not sure, if it's my money, his money, and the money's by me, technically I'm not responsible it's a Safek Mamon. But here, if you hold, like the Chum hold, that the food, the whole crop, the whole pile is not kosher food unless the 10% is given to the poor. So if it's not kosher, it's tevel. It will carry with it death, early premature death. But I need to separate out of possibility that it wasn't separated. There's a possibility that this food, this whole pile is not kosher. So I will separate 10% for the poor, or I will identify 10% in the north, the south, but I don't have to give it to the poor person. Isn't that amazing? I will separate it just to remove the possibility that this food was, in order to allow the rest of the food to be eaten, because the possibility that it wasn't separated, which forbade the rest of the food. But now the question is, now once I separated or identified it, the question is, whose money is this? Is this 10% the poor person's money? Or this 10% my money? Mine. So we say I can leave it that's what it says. Ma'akvan latzmo, I could keep it for myself. That's how the Gemara is unbelievable, how everything is dissected, and we look at the different aspects of the issue. Yes. Third year. No, Master Shani is the first and second. Yes.
So what about the food that we give to the lady?
The food, very good. Very good. The food that he gives to the Levi.
So it's not kosher according to me, because it's a meat, then you can ask all the rest of the food is tamei. So now he gives to the lady.
And everybody holds. You're gonna see with the story with the Matzah Levi. You see the Levi. When you take off 10%, we have Mr. Batesh here. We got our in-house Levi here. When you take off the 10% to the Levi, you're gonna have to separate the 10% to the Levi. But you will take off. But you're not. You can keep that to yourself, because it's the same question. Who did the seller?
Safek Mamon.
Safek Mamon. Did the seller go ahead and give the Levi already? Mr. Batesh already got paid once. He doesn't need to get paid. He doesn't need to get paid twice. He already got paid. He might have gotten paid already, the 10% to the Levi, but it's possible that he did not get paid at all. And if he did not get paid at all, so the rest of the food would be forbidden to be eaten. So therefore, to remove a possible prohibition, I will separate 10%. But then I would have to take. Then also I would have to separate 10% of that for the Kohen, true of Meiser, and then the rest. Then I could keep the rest for myself. I don't have to give to Mr. Batesh, because Mr. Batesh might have already collected. The seller might have already gave him the money. I don't have to give him. And now the Gemara continues. Amalei Abaye. Abaye says, if that's true, the way you understand that's the dispute, so ademiflagi esveko. So why are they arguing when you bought from an Amaretz, from an uneducated Jew, and you don't know whether he took off the types or not? how you need to proceed in such a situation. Liflagi b'vadai. They should argue when it's vada, you know for sure that it was not taken off. Masa ani, the 10% was not let you, because you knew the guy didn't take off the 10%. Whether you have to go ahead, whether the rest of the food has a status of tevel or not. If the whole argument is depending on whether there is a law of tevel, does masa ani, does the 10% that you give to the poor person, do we need that to be separate in order to permit the rest of the food or not? So you should tell me that they should argue in that. They should argue whether masa ani, if you don't take the 10% off for the poor person, whether the rest of the food is forbidden to be eaten or not forbidden to be eaten. If that's what their whole machloket is dependent on, meaning to say the following: if you're going to tell me a law, and if this law is based on something else, so tell me the other thing which is based on, then I'll be able to figure out the second thing. If something is a byproduct of something else, so tell me the source, and then I'll figure out the next thing. If you're going to tell me that the argument of buying from an uneducated Jew, whether you're not sure whether the uneducated Jew removed the 10% for the poor person, and if you're telling me it's dependent on whether, when we know the 10% wasn't separated, whether that would forbade the rest of the crop, so they should argue in the item that is the source of this dispute. The fact that they're arguing in the case when you bought it from an Amaret, from an uneducated Jew, but they don't argue in a case when it was for sure not taken off, seems to lend itself that definitely if it wasn't taken off the 10%, the other food will be not kosher. And there's something else going on, and we'll continue tomorrow. It's a little complex. We'll continue tomorrow more about this, and we want to welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here. We want to welcome Charles again back onto the screen, and we have to thank Mr. Silverman most probably, or Jaime, for that. Okay, well, we have to thank Charles. At the end of the day, Charles made the decision to come on. No one had a gun to his head.
Rabbi, thank you for teaching us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you for being on. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for your enthusiasm. All the best, everybody.
Good morning. How are you?
Great day. Great day. Everybody, I want to wish everybody, by the way, I'm inviting everybody to a Hanukkah dinner in my building. At Wednesday night.
You heard?
Yes.
No, good morning. How are you? You good?
Great, how are you guys? Beautiful head start today.
Yeah. Joseph, have a very good day.